First of all, let me express my great joy to be here in GGDSD College. And coming to Chandigarh, I was so impressed to see the youngsters taking the responsibility of organizing this talk. So my hearty congratulations to all the organizers, oneself, Uday, and so forth, and my dear friend Sanjay ji, who coordinated this. So basically, my talk here today, approaching infinity. Let me just quickly tell you background of myself, meaning that when I was in school, before I joined a monastery, I was thinking of becoming a physicist because I like physics and mathematics a lot. So this is how I started. And then, because the talk is very short, 18 minutes, I'm lucky that you'll not have time to ask me why I switched to humanities. Okay, so with this, how I'd like to take you this talk is that the infinity, this is a very important concept which you will find addressed in many disciplines, and particularly in the context of what I learned and what I've been through. From this, I'd like to share with you that each one of us be with me, and the manner in which I not really interact, but the manner in which I may rhetorically ask questions, just be with me and give you answers mentally. So there, the point is that finally we begin by imagining that we are day one day old child. Day one you are born on this earth, and you have no philosophy, you have no religion, you have no caste, creed, whatever. You are just a day one alien on this earth. And then day one we are born, what was your aspiration? Can you imagine what your aspiration was? We all cried. No doubt, we all cried. And if you ask, why did you cry? Did you cry because that the other baby is not fed with milk? Or I'm not getting milk, I'm feeling tired, or somebody slapped me. So this is how we started a life, which means that I don't want suffering, I want happiness. This is how we started a life. We started our life with the aspiration that my problems will be minimized and that my happiness will grow. This is how we started. So this topic, approaching infinity, is so relevant in this context, in the context of each one of our journey into life. How I started journey, whether or not I can have the infinite, the state of fearlessness, a state of freedom, infinite freedom, or infinite joy, infinite happiness. So this is how we started our life, and any system that you follow mathematics, you follow physics, you follow environmental science, or you follow, say, the whole management and so forth, and whatever takes you closer towards that ideal infinity, that is your path, that is your spirituality. So therefore, it's very important for us to know why I am who I am, what I'm seeking, and how can I seek that? So for that matter, the two things that I think we need to take away from this talk would be, one, be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. How you're born with, you're born crying, seeking happiness and shunning miseries. Be kind to yourself means try to give yourself the maximum happiness and try to get rid of your miseries to the maximum. The next point, be wisely kind to yourself. That is, do those things which will actually give rise to happiness and which will actually take you away from suffering. This is the meaning of be wisely kind to yourself. So in this connection, what I'd like to share with you here is that if this is our aspiration, then we have never really accomplished that aspiration, that my suffering becomes zero and that my happiness becomes infinite. In other words, that I have infinite freedom, infinite happiness. So this is not what has happened to me. Then the next question is whether or not this is something which is achievable. We can achieve that or not, this is the question. So for that matter, just visualize, imagine. Each one of us, imagine that, okay, we may not do that, but imagine that you are clapping with the two hands. So this sound, the sound symbolizes or is a metaphor for the suffering that we're going through. And the two hands are symbolic of that metaphor for the factors dependent on which the suffering arises. So one hand symbolizing external factors and the other hand symbolizing internal factors. Then the next question is this external factor. Okay, you just do something, finally the sound of the miseries must come to zero, must be made zero. This is what our aspiration is. So how to make it happen? To make the sound zero. One hand symbolizing external factors. How many such external factors are there? There are innumerable external factors. I'm sure you agree with me. Innumerable. If you are alone, if you're by yourself, you say that I'm lonely. And if you're with other people, you say that I have no privacy. So this is our thinking. So external factors, if you're alone, there's a problem. If you're with other people, there's a problem. This is what external factors are. External factors are innumerable in number. Even those external factors which are otherwise considered to be conducive, they can become non-conducive. Then the other part is the internal factors. Of the two, to make it short, external factors, they're innumerable number that we cannot really be cut short or get rid of completely. The only possibility to get rid of the suffering, the sound of the suffering, is by cutting the internal factors. So you may be wondering, what is that internal factor? Internal factor, while we aspire for happiness, we're not getting it, which means that we don't know the method by which to acquire that happiness. We want to get rid of the suffering, the tension, stress, anxiety in our life. Yet we don't know how to really remove these problems. So don't know means this is a cognitive error. Don't know. Know is cognition, and don't know is the lack of cognitive factor within you to acquire that. So in other words, the internal factor is the ignorance. And ignorance, we see that ignorance, don't know. I don't know how to get rid of my suffering. I don't know how to get the maximum happiness. Don't know this ignorance. This is a cognitive error. Alongside the cognitive error, there is the affective error, which is selfishness. These two are the problems which creates all the... Okay. So if you look at this, we see that from the left, which is the total void, this is the beginning of the universe. And then as we go towards the right side, this is what the world is, the universe is today. So there's a span of 15 billion years of gap. So this is how the universe came into being. And then this is the Homo sapiens. So universe came into being, and then 3 billion years ago, the initial life forms came on this earth, and then the Homo sapiens came into being 0.3 million years ago. Homo sapiens. With the Homo sapiens, then the Homo sapiens meaning the human beings. Very complex thought process came into being, cognitive, affective, and during the initial life forms, they were more the more affective, cognitive and affective both are extremely less in power. And as it develops into the Homo sapien level, then the cognitive thought process become very active and the affective thought process become very active. Then all these problems, anxiety, stress, anguish, so forth, came into being. So how to rectify all these problems? So for that, we see the panacea for all the fears of life. So as I said earlier, instead of dealing with all the external factors, why not we deal with the internal factors? So at one point, when I interact such the public discourse, I always ask them the audience to do a mathematical calculation. First, I do it very slow, and then they would give the correct answer. Next, I do it very fast. They cannot give the answer. And I ask them, why can't you give the answer? And I'm sure you will also give the same answer. They say that because you said it so fast. So now, do you agree with me that one, I said it so fast, number two, your mind works very slow. So what we do is that we are so expert in blaming external factors that you said fast. We don't look at internal, saying that my mind works slow. We don't look at it this way. So now the point is, as long as you blame outside and your suffering becomes zero, do it. But the reality is that the suffering never comes to an end by blaming the external factors. Whereas if you identify the internal factors of the two hands, external and internal, if you identify the internal factors and remove that, then your suffering can really become zero. So for that matter, the question is, what we learned is internal factor is the ignorance, not knowing, cognitive error. What is this cognitive error? If you look at the person sitting next to you, you see as a person. This is one way of looking at things. Oh, there's a person there. Oh, this is a good house. This is a good car. This is my good friend. This is how we look at things. But this says, how do you know that these things, they really are like this? Because they appear to me. Appear to meaning that the perception is taking place. That perception is questioned. As long as you believe in this perception, this is the worst of the ignorance, believing in one's perception. And let us not follow blindly. Believing in perception is the worst of the ignorance, and this is responsible for creating all the problems. Now, how to rectify this? So this is so well rectified by rectifying the ontological reality, which means what the reality is out there, the way we see outside, is this reality. Quantum physics challenged this by saying that this is not reality. What we are seeing is not reality. What we are seeing is just a deception. And quantum physics explains that what we see is so objectified there, so solidified there, this is purely mental projection, and what is really there is purely observer dependent. There's nothing independent as an observed. And likewise, this is what the Niels Bohr said. And then likewise, the ultimate reality as seen by the Buddha Shakyamuni, profound, peaceful, elaboration-free, clear-light, non-composite. Such a nectar-like reality is what I found. Finding no one who can fathom this path in silence, I'll return to the words. In other words, Niels Bohr said that this quantum physics will shock you if you understand it. And likewise, the Buddha indicated that this is so profound that hardly he could find anybody who can understand it. So this is a revolutionary concept, and only if you discover what is really there, then your ignorance will be gone rid of, and of the two hands, one hand, internal hand is removed. Then the external hand, however strong that is, will have no sound. The sound of the misery stops. So, with this in mind, I like to wind up my talk. Okay, so let's say this water, this object that I'm holding, if I ask you what is this, most of you will say that this is water, but a chemist will say this is H2O. And whereas the physicists will say that this is electrons, protons, neutrons. Who is correct? And most of sensible person will say that all three are correct. But there are three different perceptions taking place. If you see the same object in the form of electrons, protons, neutrons, then how you feel the craving towards the water will stop. That craving, There's the internal factor, which is driven by the belief that the water exists objectively there, solidified there. So the macrocosm and the microcosm. So the same object displays two truths. One is the macro, which is the water. One is micro, in the form of electrons, protons, neutrons. If you see both ways, then you are say how you are being bound, entangled, but the object will be stopped. Okay, so this is where things are all like illusion, like dream. What we see does not really reflect the reality. This is reality. What we see doesn't reflect the reality. That is the reality. So with this, the point is, I will wind this up with the simple analogy. Say that when you dream, you dream of a ghost chasing you, a nightmare, a ghost chasing you. So much of fear is there. And why is there a fear in you? Answer is very simple. Because the belief that this ghost, the dream ghost, is a real ghost. So seeing the dream ghost as a real ghost meaning it's not coming from my mind. It's really there. This is the ignorance that leads to the fear. How to get rid of this fear completely? Just wake up. Wake up and your fear dissolves. All your agitation, fear dissolves. What makes the fear dissolve at that point when you wake up? Because you realize that the dream ghost is not the real ghost. It is a dream ghost. It is not a real ghost. So, seeing the dream ghost as not a real ghost, this is wisdom. So the outcome of this wisdom is that your fear dissolves. The way quantum physics explains, and the way the Buddhist philosophy, the Nagarjuna's philosophy explains, that what we see is not real. The moment you see that what you see is not real, this is a waking up from the sleep of ignorance. This is how we can bring an end to the one hand, symbolizing the internal factor, then only the external factors are left. However strong the external factors are, the sound of the miseries will stop. So this is the benefit of understanding quantum physics and understanding the Nagarjuna's philosophy of the emptiness of objectivity. Thank you so much. Thank you.